The seventh Umbral Calamity was a cataclysmic event that irrevocably changed the face of the star. From the falling red moon Dalamud did the elder primal Bahamut burst forth and exterminate nearly everything in its path. But not everything was left to oblivion, for even in the darkest of nights can the strength of man carry on towards a better tomorrow. I stand amongst the remains of one of several camps that had been destroyed by the seventh Umbral Calamity, and while many have fallen, not all have completely faded. In this video, we'll explore these grounds and the events that led to their ultimate destruction. My name is Juliet, and this is the Eorzean Historian. Many of the camps that litter Eorzea have been built upon the backs of those that came before. Camp Dragonhead, Camp Blackbrush, and Camp Bentbranch are just a few examples. Camp Dragonhead morphed from a tiny little tent to an extraordinary fortress built to stand the test of any Dravanian onslaught. Blackbrush became a bustling outpost for trade and mining, while Bentbranch houses the realm's finest stables. And while very little can be found from the camps they evolved from, that can't be said for others. Scattered across Eorzea lay the remains of 4 notable camps that were once frequented by adventurers and travelers alike. Of these 4, 2 have endured, and the others have been left to rot. For the first stop on our archaeological survey, we find ourselves at Camp Overlook. It is one of several existing camps that popped up in the wake of the Calamity. It is not, however, completely without its roots. For just outside this isolated little hamlet, you'd find what many might dismiss as simple trash. However, what we are actually seeing are what remains of Camp Iron Lake. Camp Iron Lake was a small camp, not very different from its sisters. It housed a shop, a campfire, the trademark tent and fence, and other amenities, not least of all, an aetheryte. While the aetheryte no longer resides on the spot, it is likely the remnants of it were repurposed for Camp Overlook. So, let's instead turn our attention to what does remain. As you can see, many of the larger bits of supplies that were otherwise stored here have remained, left to rot, and become encased with moss and mold. The urgency of its abandonment can be apparent in something as small as a wine bottle, left untouched and upright, as if it had only just been put down in the middle of a gathering of friends. To them, unknowing it was the last time it'd ever be placed. Around the other side of the camp, we can find scattered bits of firewood, proof of a long since obliterated campfire, where scores of friends would sit idly by and tell stories of their adventures over a crackling flame. Even buried in the brush are forgotten sacks of grains and other commodities, drowning in the ever-encroaching vines of an irreverent world. The severity of the destruction wrought by Bahamut is most apparent in the surrounding fence. Once a barrier to ensure the safety of those who found solace within its grounds, the twisted, mangled remains offer no succor to those who pass by. Wood that has long since charred and deteriorated, the very iron bars scorched by the fire and encompassed by rust. As you can see, impaled through the camp are these spear-like poles, some still donning torn fabrics. These poles served as supports for the tent's awnings, the remains of which can also be seen on the roof. Shredded beyond repair, these cloth guardians could grant shade from the sun, or a brief reprieve from pouring rain. One can only imagine how many found themselves resting peacefully beneath its comforting gaze. Out of everything we could dig up here, there is one final object that unwittingly transcended time to deliver a message to those who dare tread too close to this forgotten grave. tucked away behind the rubble, fallen from its once proud perch over the tent's doorway, rests a sign, which, when translated, reads simply, "Trespassers beware." An ominous token that almost whispers with the voices of the dead, and anyone who does not heed its subtle warning may find themselves walking through the footsteps of melancholic spirits. However, not all camps found a place in the New World. Our next stop is located in the Kurthis Western Highlands. Falcon's Nest serves as a final bastion dividing Ishgard with the frozen wastelands of an icy purgatory. Very few people dare to travel these frigid wastes, for nothing waits beyond, save for a land of dragons and a cold, lonely death. But if you chose to brave these unforgiving lands and traveled northwest for quite a few malms, then located just beyond the cliff, you would stumble across a ruin, frozen in time. This is Camp Riversmeet, and you'd be forgiven for thinking it wouldn't be on this list. It doesn't look anything like the other camp. Well, you're right. However, rest assured, it has earned that coveted title of Lost Camp. Kurthis wasn't always blanketed in an endless snow. Before the Calamity, it was a very lush alpine region with a wide array of fauna and flora, rolling hills, and lush, vibrant trees. This area of Eorzea had always been a place I held dear to my heart. And then came the Calamity. As Bahamut burst forth from his colossal prison, the world became engulfed in hellfire like no other. But Kurthis suffered a fate far more the opposite. The elemental channels that coursed through its beating heart erupted with a powerful surge of frosted ether. This imbalance led to an explosion of cold that effectively froze almost all aspects of Kurthis in time. The destruction was so immediate that if we take a look around the camp, we can find clues that point to that final moment. Most notably, the aetheryte. Its sensitivities to the ether turned it into a bomb that in the span of a second froze mid-explosion. Take note of the unique design as well. You see, prior to the Calamity, aetherytes took on a much different appearance. They were smaller, far slenderer, and were accompanied by 3 smaller crystals that orbited the structure. Post-Calamity, when all the aetherytes had to be rebuilt, they were constructed in such a way that their size is capable of much more strain in the event of an emergency. It is these previous structures of aetheryte that still mark the maps of adventurers today, including the smaller ones located within towns, but that's for another time. Notice as well that the flags are almost all pointing away from the direction of the aetheryte, showcasing the frigid force that was exerted when it began to explode. However, 4 other flags are in varying directions. The 2 forward flags of the camp are instead pointing inward, a result of the encroaching winter coming from the opposing direction. The flags atop the 2 forward tents are in completely different directions of everything else. What we can gather from this is a sense of chaos and confusion, that the frost didn't come from just one place, but many, and its effects were felt at various stages. As we set our sights to the other objects scattered around the camp, we can acknowledge the fact that it doesn't really share any similarities to its sister, save for the aetheryte and surrounding fence. The fence is an excellent example of how the sudden and extreme temperatures have perfectly preserved the camp. Not an ounce of decay can be seen, nor is any bit of it broken or charred, simply encased in rime, partially buried in snow, and left to defend a world that has long forgotten it. Ishgard, you see, wasn't just fighting a war against the growing monstrosities that plagued the fields of Eorzea during the Calamity, but the Dragonsong War on top of it. Fearing a Dravanian assault, despite Nidhogg having been at slumber for 2 years now, the Ishgardians completely outfitted the isolated camp to help stave off monster and dragon alike. The tents were replaced with Ishgardian military tents, lamps were switched out for torches, and an overabundance of supplies, gunpowder, cannons, and artillery ensured this camp would be well prepared for whatever came. Still poised, positioned, and ready to fire at any moment. Alas, it was all for naught, as the frigid winds swept through the camp, freezing and killing whatever its ghostly touch could reach. The remains were left abandoned, home only to scavenging wolves and ethereal sprites that seek to add more victims to an already frozen grave. Our next camp is located clear across Kurthis, in a location so difficult to reach by normal means the average person simply is unable to by foot. The Kurthus Eastern Lowlands is an area that was once accessible by either Griffin Crossing from the Central Highlands or a road via the North Shroud. While Griffin Crossing still exists, it is in extreme disrepair. An intrepid adventurer might be able to cross, but they'd be met with a wall of snow so dense it would take a lifetime to uncover. Contrariwise, the road from the North Shroud was completely obliterated by the 7th Umbral Calamity. The upsurge of land masses and the ultimate destruction of Bahamut terraformed the fabric of the star. The road was later rebuilt, but redirected into the Central Highlands. As for the Eastern Lowlands, the only way feasibly accessible is by airship, the grounds of which many might have heard before. I speak, of course, of the Fields of Glory. The Fields of Glory is just a small outcrop of the Eastern Lowlands. Currently, it serves as a field of battle for training regiments and sparring between the grand companies of Eorzea. While many are enthralled by the heat of battle, if one were to stop and take even a single glance around, you would find that the field is steeped in history. The Fields of Glory consist of the ruins of a hamlet known as Owl's Nest, the sister to Falcon's Nest, Clearwater, which was once an ethereal gate on the shores of Clearwater Lake, and finally, Camp Glory. Camp Glory was a single camp that occupied Kurthus Eastern Lowlands. As with its sisters, the camp was once a humble sanctuary, offering shops, quests, and reprieve from the outside world. A single tent had taken root there, but the rise in monstrous raids just before the Calamity brought about the need for greater support. This resulted in a camp that holds the highest number of tents we've seen thus far. However, unlike Camp Riversmeet, the landscape in the Eastern Lowlands has suffered rapid thawing and refreezing. Pelted by blizzards, the tents and fences are partially buried, their iron fixtures rusted and decayed. The poles that once held the awnings and lamps are splintered and frostbitten. Nothing remains of any sign of supplies, nor is there any sign of an aetheryte. The structure of the aetheryte did survive in a state not dissimilar to Camp Riversmeet, but has recently crumbled to nothing, leaving behind the shattered remains of a once proud encampment. While the paltry remains of the camp continue to endure, years of battle, temperature imbalances, and exposure will eventually turn the camp to dust. So next time you set foot on the field, take a moment, give a prayer, and then fight for those you have lost, and for those you can yet save. In the days leading up to the Calamity, hordes of voice-sent and other monsters ravaged the realm, causing widespread mayhem and destruction as they waged war on the camps and city-states. And as the red moon loomed ever closer from above, the etheric magics that pulsed through the planet became more and more unstable. This series of events led to the inability to use aetherites for a long period of time, or even people becoming lost in their attempt to teleport. These series of chaotic events reached a crescendo when Dalamud finally cracked open. An explosive surge of ether coursed throughout the realm and tore nearly every able-bodied aetherite to shreds, cutting people off from any way to escape their impending doom. One of the greatest examples of this event comes in the form of our next stop, Camp Revenants Toll, located just outside its descendant. Like the other camps in Kurthus, Camp Revenants Toll had originally housed a single tent, which expanded during the raids of untold armies of monsters. Once the red moon finally gave way, elemental imbalances in the earth caused corrupted crystals to spew forth and completely obliterate the camp. All that remains are 2 tents and a massive debris field. Pole positions in 2 spots seem to suggest the existence of at least 2 other tents, but they no longer stand. Whether they had been completely dismantled or eviscerated from the blast, we can't be sure. There is a notable difference in the number of supplies that were stationed at this camp compared to the previous, rotted to the core, mind you, and it was likely due to the proximity to Garlean strongholds and Mordona's affinity with unpredictable crystals as the result of the Battle of Silvertear Skies in 1562 of the 6th Astral Era. The state of the tents and fences are much like Camp Iron Lakes, which isn't surprising given their same materials, but unlike Lenosha, vegetation in Mordona is sparse, leaving the ruins in a permanent state of exposure and vulnerability. Many of the pots and barrels that once housed items for trade have long since been destroyed, either by the explosion or pillagers looking to loot what they could in a moment of apocalyptic terror. This lack of flora can also be apparent in the state of the ruins. They are, in some ways, remarkably preserved, lacking much sign of moss, mold, or mildew. In fact, if you were to venture past, you could be forgiven for assuming the camps had only recently been abandoned. However, the slow oxidization of the copper supports of the chimney help prove the age. It takes at least 5 years for this type of transformation to begin, and although the state of the camp is far more hollow and devoid of life than the others, that shouldn't stop you from taking a moment and giving a prayer for the sorrowful people who'd taken refuge from the storm, only to be lost in the blink of an eye. The saving grace for this crumbled giant is that it too has found new life in this world today. Retaining its same name, Revenants toll stands stronger than ever. Though it began as a freshly constructed outpost during the 7th Umbral era, that rigid outpost quickly evolved and manifested into a powerful fortress where adventurers, traders, smiths, and researchers gather in one of the largest evolutions of a camp in Eorzean history. It's a bittersweet feeling. Even though naught remains but the tattered vestiges of a bygone era, memories of the fallen forever live in the hearts of those who remain. And while some camps have been left to ruin, others breed new life, new friends, and new adventures. And although the world suffered the fires of Bahamut, it was from those very fires that the world was inevitably reborn. So, the next time you find yourself wandering about on your next quest, or simply taking a moment to catch a fish or two, take a look around and see what treasures you might be able to find. I really hope you enjoyed this video. There's been massive growth since the launch of my first one, and I'm incredibly grateful to everyone willing to support the channel. I'm going to do my very best to bring you a new lore video every month, and with a short in between. So be sure to subscribe and keep up with the releases, leave a like, and let me know which Lost Camp was your favorite in the comments below. This has been the Eorzean Historian, signing off until our next great adventure. Ciao for now!